Good evening, everyone. My name is Jill Wiedrick, and I am the Village Planner. Welcome to the Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission hearing for 58 South Main Street. This is an opportunity for both land use boards to hear about the proposed site plan and certificate of appropriateness amendments and revised signage from the applicant, ask questions of the applicant, and for the public to voice their support or opposition to those applications. Please keep in mind that at the September hearing, the applications for site plan review and certificate of appropriateness were approved. The board's held decision on signage for the project. The applications and staff reports were all posted on the village website and e-code at least a week ago and were available for the public to review. Please note that all written comments that have been received from 4 p.m. today have been provided to the applicant, the Planning Board, and the Historic Preservation Commission. And in this case, there were no comments that were received. If you are planning to speak today and have not already done so, please sign in on the sign-in sheets located on the table. Please also silence your cell phones during the hearing. The Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission may elect to take a short break between cases this evening. If the members choose to break in between cases, I will announce the time that the meeting will reconvene. The first matter that the applicant will present is the request for an amendment to the site plan review approval and the certificate of appropriateness approval. The applicant will present the proposed amendments. The Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission will then have the opportunity to ask questions. Following this, there will be an opportunity for those in support and opposition to speak. After all that would like to speak have had a chance to do so, the applicant will respond to comments. Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission members may then ask additional questions. At this point, the hearing will be closed. The Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission will then deliberate and vote. During this time, no additional testimony may be given by anyone. The applicant will then present the revised signage application. As with the amendments, the Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission will then have the opportunity to ask questions. Following this, there will be an opportunity for those in support and opposition to speak. After all that would like to speak have had a chance to do so, the applicant will respond to comments. Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission members may then ask additional questions. After any additional questions from the Board and Commission members have been addressed, the hearing will be closed. The Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission will then deliberate and vote. During this time, again, no additional testimony may be given by anyone. The applicant and all speakers in support or opposition to the applications are reminded that the board's decisions will be based on the standards set forth in Village Code, and all comments should be directed to those standards. Before we begin, please note that the board members are all volunteers. I would like each of the board members to confirm their presence for the purpose of a roll call and establishing a quorum for this hearing, and to introduce themselves, the land use board that they are part of, and their area of expertise.
Tom O'Gara with the Planning Board.
Andy Martin, I'm with the Planning Board.
Joseph Burkhart, Planning Board.
Heather Williams, Planning Board.
Yana Goransky, Planning Board.
Kara Myers, Historic Preservation Commission.
Doris Davis Fritsch, Historic Preservation.
Chuck Smith, Historic Preservation.
David Stites, Historic Preservation.
Kyle Wobser, Historic Preservation.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is a motion to approve the minutes of the September 21st, 2023 meeting. And these are minutes of the joint meeting that you had in September.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I can second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Everybody can vote on this one.
Oh, okay.
So everybody is in favor. Okay. So again, the way the hearing will run is we'll do cases 1 and 3 first, and those will focus on the amendments, and then we'll do cases 2 and 4 following that. So case 1, the case type is a site plan approval amendment. The address is 58 South Main Street. The applicant is Angelo Ingracia, 58 South Main, Fairport, LLC. The request is to amend the site plan approval by including refuse storage on site, resulting in a waiver of 46 parking spaces, and removing the approval of a license agreement as a condition of the site plan approval dated September 21st, 2023. Case 3, the case type is a certificate of appropriateness amendment. The address is 58 South Main Street. The applicant is Angelo Ingracia, 58 South Main, Fairport, LLC. The request is to amend the certificate of appropriateness by including refuse storage on site and removing the approval of a license agreement as a condition of the certificate of appropriateness dated September 21st, 2023. And as a reminder, what we're looking at here is the amendments. So there is parking to be looked at by the planning board. There is the on-site refuse to be looked at by both the planning board and historic preservation, and the removal of the license agreement as a condition. So those are what the expectation is that any members of the public will comment on. So the applicant can come and present.
Matt Tomlinson, Marathon Engineering. Thanks for hearing us tonight. Is there supposed to be a light on that?
There should be a light.
There we go. Matt Tomlinson, Marathon Engineering. I also have Ryan Kelly, landscape architect, with us, as well as Jamie Wick with Hanlon Architects, who will be coming up, I think, more for the other cases, but they're here for questions on these as well. So as Jill mentioned, we have come back before you for modifications, as she identified. And the first one I want to talk about is the location of the dumpster refuse enclosure. The prospective tenants were very adamant that they needed the 11 spaces, and that's why we proposed it here in the original location, pursuing a license agreement with the village. And then as the approvals or internal approvals that included operations, some of the other folks from the day-to-day, it came to find out that it was a little bit too far away for their comfort level going through a parking lot over to that location. So we started exploring some additional options, including putting it more central in the parking lot, which was not amenable to the village and would cause some issues with snow plowing, parking circulation, those kind of things. So there's a diagram on the screen here behind me where we started looking at, okay, if we do need to put it on the parcel, where can it go? And so obviously we narrowed that down to 2 locations. So I'm going to talk about those, and I understand that the labels on them could be somewhat confusing, so I'll reference them in color here. Yellow in the northwestern portion of our parcel, taking up 3 parking spaces and shown at an angle, was explored originally as the preferred, so that it limited how many parking spaces directly behind the Starbucks were going to be encroached on. And there were some challenges with that related to access for the trucks because of the opposing parking spaces, as well as losing 3 spaces versus 2, trying to minimize that impact. In addition, it also would be present on the lot that we're creating for the historic building, which had some of its own challenges there as well. So the final landing spot and where we're proposing and requesting the modification to the site plan today is the green location that solves a lot of the issues related to truck access head-on without having to manipulate. It's kind of tucked in the corner. It's off the lot with the historic building, so it seemed to check a lot of the boxes relative to concerns related to proximity to the building, least impact on parking, et cetera. So from a location standpoint, that's how we arrived at where we're at today. From a parking standpoint, as Jill mentioned, we're also asking for a modification of the waiver. Originally, we were requesting a waiver of 44 parking spaces due to its proximity to the parking lot. We're now requesting 46. As you can see, we're impacting parking within the public lot with the original approval location. Now we're impacting parking spaces on ours. So from a total impact standpoint, it's swapping 2 spaces on our lot for not impacting a couple within the municipal lot. So from a net parking spaces within this parking field, that waiver is essentially the same, and that's why we're requesting that modification. You want me to talk about the removal of the license agreement, or that kind of follows with it? So we're no longer requesting that license agreement for location on the parcel itself. And then from a dumpster enclosure standpoint, the original submission package included split-face block as some of the material. That has now been swapped out for brick that matches the facade of the building, which is what the boards approved previously. So we believe that that is now in conformance with the materials that this board has selected, and that will be matched in the material that's used for the enclosure.
I should also mention that this presentation, there's a copy in everybody's packets so that you can follow along.
So from that standpoint, I believe that covers the site portions for case 1 and 3 for the modifications that we're requesting. If there's any additional questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm good.
So I did want you to expand a little bit, because I did like the previous location for, it's having less impact, I think, on customers walking by and being near it, just having the dumpster a little bit more out of the way. So was the reasoning, was it just that simple that, traversing across the parking lot to dispose of the trash was too far?
So that's the main reason, or the impetus in exploring the modification was that coming to light with the operations folks. The second piece that made the tenant a little bit uncomfortable, that was a revocable, and this way they have some control and there's no relocating of it in the future. I'd say that's an ancillary comment that came up as part of the discussion, but that was raised as well.
Yeah, and I will say I like the green. I agree with you in terms of the two locations that you have on site on the parcel, the green one being more preferable. Would you say that that's a little bit more out of the way for most customers? They're not going to be walking by it as often, being on the southwest portion of the parcel as opposed to the northwest?
Yeah, that's correct. Not only for patrons of the two establishments, but also the public sidewalk that's coming in and through on the north side of the existing building. To be clear, we have made application not with the option of the location. We are proposing that southwest corner of the parking. We just wanted to explain to the boards the iterative steps that we took to arrive at that point.
Okay, that's good. I like to hear that because I think the northwest corner is wrong.
Yep.
I think if you're going to move it, the southwest corner is the place to put it.
And just one other comment, it seems like moving it where you did, I like the change a lot. It's less impactful for other things in the village, the Boy Scouts and their thing, it's out of the way for the farmer's market. So I think this overall, it's a good move. So no other questions or comments from me.
Sidewalk gets extended, it's not shown on the site plan, but I think it is on the landscaping plan, to that back door. Like past
On the
back
rear of
door.
the enclosure, yeah, to allow pedestrian access without having to open the main gates. We want to make sure that those are only opened when they come to empty and then closed right away so that it's not causing an issue or an eyesore.
Right, so, but on the rear, the sidewalk will be extended past that
Yeah,
back door?
That is
right?
correct.
Okay, and there's no way that you could do it without a dumpster enclosure or a smaller enclosure or with some other solution?
We explored totes for the two, but those require enclosures as well with food establishment outside, and there's some operational issues there, so that was a non-starter to eliminate it completely.
Thank you.
And so just to be clear, the intent is that the dumpster services both of the buildings, the restaurant and the Starbucks, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then on the landscaping plan, it looks to me like I'm not great with the directions, to the south side of the Starbucks, right? Those are trees on the far side of where the dumpster would. The parking spaces are in the image above it, and those are trees that have been added below it.
I'll have Ryan
kind of-
Kelly, who's the landscape
Yeah.
architect.
And Ryan, just for what I'm kind of driving at is those trees provide some screening between that and the historic Italianate structure that's on the parcel next door.
Correct, yeah, our goal was to make the trash enclosure disappear, even though we have beautiful brick on the facade.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yep, so we have upright arborvitae. And then also keep in mind, we still have, there's an existing tree we're protecting in place. There's a major maple at the south property line that also supports that.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for putting a lot of thought into this, and I think that where the enclosure ended up is great landscaping as well. Just a couple of suggestions as you move forward. when I was looking at the grading plan, it looks like the drainage inside the dumpster is going towards like the northeast corner. And just if you can pay attention to where it drains, I'm assuming there's going to be a pad that's going to be poured, and just making sure that the drainage goes towards the west side where the gates are opening, just so there's not standing water or puddles. With garbage, it could be a little smelly.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, make sure it drains out the front.
And then one more thing, I love the brick, just from kind of structural point of view, brick is a porous material. So, it would, I don't know if you want to consider a concrete, like a little concrete curb underneath it at the grade, just because people are going to shovel, the shovel's going to hit the brick, or they're going to put salt down, and that brick is going to start looking, it's going to get destroyed at the very bottom of that enclosure with snow, or with the wheels of the dumpster being hit against it. Just something to consider.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that and incorporate, maybe bringing the footer up a little bit more or something to protect the bottom.
That is all I have. Thank you.
I have one more thing really quickly. The area between the dumpster and the back door on the Starbucks, what type of lighting is in that area? Which with the trees sort of creates like a little bit of a potentially dark alcove. I just wanted to find out what type of lighting would be back there.
Jamie can talk to the building mounted lighting portions.
There's a light over the back door, and there's also some decorative fixtures on the back wall of the building.
We're also, I believe, I'm sorry, I'm squinting because this is small. We were proposing a parking lot lighting, I believe, relocation back there. So I don't have the light levels there, but we'll make sure that it's lit.
I really don't have anything to add. I just want to say I agree with the comments that have been made by the planning board, and just want to say thank you for your attention to detail. I really like the new location of the dumpster, the materials. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm interested in the height of the enclosure because it's not indicated anywhere, and I've seen many enclosures where stuff gets piled up higher, taller than the enclosure, and I hate to see that in this location. So I would like the height of the enclosure addressed, please.
We're currently showing this at 7'6" tall.
Okay.
Is that tall enough, or are you looking for a larger enclosure? We're trying not to have this, block the building by having a large dumpster enclosure in front of the back entrance.
7'6" sounds pretty good. So I couldn't tell. I could sort of tell by the height of the door, assuming it was a 7-foot door. But
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, but that could be tricky there. So yeah, 7'6" seems like a good number. And I believe in the original drawing, you had a precast cap, and I guess in the brick version, you still have a precast cap.
That's still there, yep.
So that's a nice detail also. Okay, good. That's what I had. Thanks.
Can you go back to the site layout plan, planting plan? The planting plan, the one that was colored. So if I'm exiting the back of Starbucks, is there going to be a sidewalk that takes you to the dumpster, or how am I circulating around those plants to get to the dumpster?
Yeah, so good question. You've got to go north and then up to the main connecting walk that goes between the parking and South Main Street, and then turn south. So you are walking a little bit of a U, but that parking lot corner where the dumpster is about 3 to 3.5 feet higher than the South Main Street street entrance. So the building relates to the sidewalk and main pedestrian walkway, so that's why there's a little bit of an elongated path to get back there just for grade, to make that ADA accessible.
Did you consider stairs so that people don't have to be carrying the garbage towards the public and then back to the dumpster?
Yeah, we did. They actually have a cart that they put all the bags in and then wheel it out, so we did explore that, but the longer path. The main seating area really is from that midpoint double door shown on the north face of Starbucks and then towards South Main Street. There's a bike rack, and that's kind of the utilitarian area, if you will, to the west half of the building. So we tried to minimize that as much as we could.
And then I just want to clarify some of the material choices. On our packet, it says that split face CMU is going to be used, but in the presentation it said brick. So is it brick in our packets? Incorrect?
No, it was updated in the most recent staff report,
Okay.
that there is brick. There was a drawing that was submitted, and it's also noted in the application.
And then what's the material of the door?
So the rear door is a hollow metal door, and then the gates are a metal panel, and they have a metal frame around them. And the metal used on those doors for the dumpsters will match the metal that's on the building.
Did you consider any other material for the door, aluminum, knowing that it's kind of a high abuse area? Hollow metal could get scratched and it becomes prone to rusting and might become an aesthetic issue.
No, and we can choose like a galvannealed to use on the door that's more salt resistant than a typical steel door.
And you said the gate is going to be some kind of siding, or?
Yeah, metal panel.
And is that referenced anywhere else on the building, or is that now a new material we're introducing to the?
It's a new similar material. We have some metal coping on the building, like on the awnings and around the openings, that is consistent with this dark bronze anodized.
And then it looks like you're going ahead with concrete for the pad instead of asphalt, which I think you had before. Is that going to be a heavy-duty concrete so that it doesn't rut due to the weight of the dump truck or the garbage truck?
Yeah, it'll be a concrete pavement section.
That's all I had.
I don't have any comments or questions.
Anyone else? Okay. Do you mind taking that down? So I'm going to ask for anyone in support of the application. Anyone in opposition to the application? Does the applicant wish to add any additional information? Are there any additional questions from any of the board members? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll first, the planning board and HPC will jointly discuss the application if there's any more to discuss. And if there's not, you can also say we don't need to discuss it. And then we will each separately, the planning board, I will ask them to first discuss the proposed amendments, and then we'll move on to Historic Preservation Commission, which will go through their standards for certificate of appropriateness. So is there a desire to have additional joint discussion?
Not here.
Okay, so let's discuss first with planning board. Any additional comments?
I don't have any.
No, I would just note and highlight the point that the parking space issue nets out to 0. It's really just a function of where you're moving that loss of 2 parking spaces to.
Could we discuss a bit the relocation of refuse on site?
I'll go first. From a logistical standpoint for restaurant operations, I understand what the applicant is seeking to do and the impact on operations, on having it be a long walk across a parking lot, potentially in the evening, to get rid of refuse. Makes sense. I think they've selected the best available location on site to put it, and it's appropriately screened by both brick fencing and landscaping.
Any additional comments?
I think it's got a positive impact on the community and the other uses, the other public uses, so I think it's a smart move all the way around.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what I said before. While I do prefer the original location of the dumpster for it being more out of the way for customers and other users of the site and area, I think that if you're going to move it on site, the spot chosen was the correct spot. And yeah, I'll say I agree with all the screening and landscaping. I think it was well thought out.
Okay. Is there a desire to add any conditions to the approval? Okay. I'll read the request and that'll function as the motion. And so after I read it, if I can get a first and a second, that would be appreciated. So the request is to amend the site plan approval by including refuse storage on site, resulting in a waiver of 46 parking spaces and removing the approval of a license agreement as a condition of the site plan approval dated September 21st, 2023.
Motion?
You can second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Historic Preservation Commission, you're up next. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the standards, and so I'd like you to provide feedback related to the refuse being located on site, so the amendment of the certificate of appropriateness for that, and also for the removal of the license agreement. The general design, character, and appropriateness to the property of the proposed alteration or new construction.
I overall agree with the general construction of the screen wall. I do think that Jana's comment about concrete curb to improve the durability would be something you should consider, and more robust or a door that's going to perform a little bit better than a traditional hollow metal. But overall, I like the brick, I like the precast, I like the metal siding on the gates. I just want a more durable solution.
Anyone else on that one? Okay. The scale of the proposed alteration or new construction in relation to the property itself, surrounding properties in the neighborhood.
Can you address the scale? That's okay.
Yeah.
So the applicant told us that the building was going to be, the enclosure was going to be 7'6" high, which I think is an appropriate scale as an addendum to the main building. So I feel that in its location, it's an appropriate scale for the neighborhood. And I also feel that the landscaping also contributes to that reduction in scale. And I think that as far as an additional element on the site, its location in the southeast corner is appropriate.
Anything else? Texture and materials and the relation to similar features of the or of other properties or the property.
I think the brick is very appropriate, and again, the location and is in the right place to be sort of hidden away and overall appropriate for the site.
I'd like to also mention the fact that the metal components of the new proposed structure are complementing the proposed new metal components of the coffee shop. And I think that's an appropriate response to this solution.
Okay. Number 4, visual compatibility with surrounding properties, including proportion of the property's front facade, proportion and arrangement of windows and other openings with the facade, roof shape, and the rhythm of spacing of properties on streets, including setback. So of course, this isn't a building per se, but if you could speak to the location of the refuse.
I think the location, the proposed location, I think makes a lot of sense, given its proximity to the new proposed structure. I especially like the plantings. I think that will certainly diminish the appearance of it from the property to the south. I think that will help a lot. I think when you're looking at it from the west, I think it'll blend in seamlessly with the new construction.
The importance of historic, architectural, or other features to the significance of the property.
You never want us to say it does not apply, but I would say it does not apply.
Something for you to perhaps consider is that we have a constructed, present historic structure, and so the proposed location perhaps is appropriate because it's south of that and complements the new structure. Does that?
That sounds right, Jill.
Okay. That being said, again, I will read the request, which will function as a motion if I could get a first and a second. The request is to amend the certificate of appropriateness by including refuse storage on site and removing the approval of a license agreement as a condition of the certificate of appropriateness dated September 21st, 2023. Is there a desire to add any conditions to the approval? Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any opposition? Motion passed.
So I'm now going to call cases 2 and 4. Case 2 is signed site plan review. The address is 58 South Main Street. The applicant is Angelo Ingrassia, 58 South Main Fairport LLC. The request is to review and approve signage for uses located on Lot 1 and Lot 2. Case 4, the case type is certificate of appropriateness. The address is 58 South Main Street. The applicant is Angelo Ingrassia, 58 South Main Fairport LLC. The request is to review and approve signage for uses located on Lot 1 and 2. And please note that these two cases were held from the September 21st, 2023 hearing. In response to the comments that were provided by both boards, the applicant was sent a letter with those comments and what they have submitted as response to that. So you guys can present now.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, y'all. Ryan Kelly, RPKLA. All right, perfect. So just to recap, last time we spoke, we have 2 freestanding signs for the restaurant parcel, Main Street facing and parking facing, as you can see in the elevations. Our major update tonight was a name update. So our client, Greg and Jody for the restaurant, are pretty excited to announce Bonnie and Clyde, given the historic significance of the bank concept. And so as promised, text dimensions fit within our previously shown black aluminum box. Colors and style remain the same. Logo is slightly different, but they're working with a graphic designer to really tie their branding style throughout the interior of the property as well. But we thought this was classy and tasteful and will be fairly subtle. We are planning on having a ground-mounted light. So again, just, yeah, good, nice curb appeal, and happy to answer any questions around that.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask that we also present the Starbucks signage at the same time, and that way we can entertain comments for both.
What you see here is what we previously submitted for the building signage. These are channel letters. The lighting is done by some fixtures that are mounted to the building, so the sign is not internally illuminated. This is fairly consistent with other buildings that are up and down Main Street as far as materials, scale, and the composition. This is just the same rendering that we presented last time to give you some context with the site and some more spatial character to that. What the comments that we would receive last time were that the monument sign was not acceptable, and the boards both liked post and panel sign. So we present to you an updated monument sign here, and then you'll see in the inset image there the ground-mounted lighting pointed up at this sign. So this is made out of a high-density urethane. It kind of has a wood look texture to it, so it will blend in with the other signs on the other properties on the neighboring sites. Did a quick survey here of some of the other properties. This is all to the north side of the Canal Bridge, and just went through and did some rough measurements on signs to illustrate that the sign that we're proposing is within scale of all the other signs. There are a few that are not shown here, but this is to show that generally in context, this is consistent with all the other signs in the village. We also are continuing to show the sign oriented towards the sidewalk the way that we did. That's also consistent with all these other signs. Roughly touched on that last time, that we feel that this is consistent and appropriate for the village.
The Bonnie and Clyde sign is on the east side and the west side, but you don't have a Starbucks sign on the west side. Is there identification on the building for that?
Not in the courtyard, no.
Doris, there is
Saying
signage on the west
like,
side.
what would be the rear
Correct.
is what you're saying.
Yep, the signage will be the same on the front of the building as it will be at the back of the building.
I don't see that on the plan. I don't see a sign on the west side.
Yep, it's right here.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, you cannot see.
it's on the building. It's on the building. Okay.
Is there any chance you could bring that up? It's right here.
So the image on the left is the Main Street side, and the image on the right is the parking lot side.
And just to clarify, one of the renderings we have still has the old version of the Starbucks sign? That's
Correct.
not.
So
that's
I
out.
put that in more for, that is my own fault, because Jamie advised me not to. I put that in because I wanted you to be able to see where that sign location would be in relation to the rest of the building. So that is not the sign that's proposed. I took a little bit of liberty encouraging you to use your imaginations on that. So I do apologize to Jamie because he advised me not to.
We cropped it out of our presentation.
You did.
Any thought behind why the Bonnie and Clyde sign is north-south and the Starbucks sign is east-west?
But I think I'll speak to at least the Bonnie and Clyde signage. Part of that was driven for the retaining measures. So we're showing really both signs there's landscape in front of them, behind them. And so we were trying to have that pop out of the landscape. It really started with the Main Street side. It worked a little bit better than having it perpendicular to the main walk. We wanted it perpendicular to the shared walkway. And it just so happened we had retaining measures on the Main Street side. So that was really the driving force behind our layout. But I guess, yeah, we looked at it having it perpendicular to the shared walk on the interior.
Yeah.
And there's no signage on the building, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. On either
Yeah.
the front or the back of the bank building, there's no signage identifying the
Correct.
restaurant.
We explored that up front, and it was advised to have more of a ground-mounted approach, post-mounted approach.
Given that the Starbucks is marked from the front and the back, was there any thought of putting any type of signage identifying Bonnie and Clyde from the back? I'm not certain I'm recalling correctly, but I thought there was some discussion that that would be a usable entrance for the restaurant.
We do have signage from a post-mounted, or not a post-mounted, excuse me, ground-mounted position. We do not have any signage on the building. I believe Greg and Jody spoke with the planning board originally, and that was ill-advised. And so we took that approach from the beginning.
No, sorry, I missed the post sign in the back.
Yeah, so it's a mirrored image, so that'll be consistent with Starbucks.
What is the dimension of the location of the sign for Starbucks from the sidewalk to the sign? Thanks. No, like, it's more quantitatively, what is the dimension?
Jamie, could you speak to that? I believe. So if my memo is correct, it's actually, Mr. Burkhart, 2 feet from the property line, the street setback. Would that be correct?
Roughly 10 feet from the curb.
How does that compare to other signs along that strip of South Main Street?
We can look at the Keenan Funeral Home sign there, it's 3 or 4 feet back. I guess they all vary rather significantly. You can see the orthodontist sign there is maybe 6 or 8 feet back. What we have here is the patio in the front yard too, and there was also comments making sure that we could see the sign around that patio space.
Sure. I think of it from a couple different perspectives. One is I think it should be relatively consistent with the other ones. And then the second is I think just if you were to put up a fence, it would at least have to be 3 feet away. So I would think that we would hold a sign to the same standard. I mean, it looks like you have the flexibility to accommodate that. And is that something that you would be agreeable to if we asked you to be at least 3 feet away from the
Yep.
sidewalk?
If there's a setback requirement, we can meet that,
I don't believe there is, but I'm asking you if you would do it irregardless of that.
if that's a request. Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
You said it before, but I just want to make certain, none of these signs are going to be backlit. I see the goosenecks on the ones on the building, but the Bonnie and Clyde is going to be ground mounted and nothing. Okay.
Yep.
A+ on the name for Bonnie and Clyde, whoever thought of it, that's great.
Jill, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would the other signs that we're using as point of references have been in front of the planning board at any point?
Perhaps, and also maybe not.
Okay.
You know, on page 13 of the planning board packet, the staff report, it lays out for what is permitted and what is proposed for lot 1 and lot 2. And there is a provision within the code that allows you to waive those requirements if you so see fit. So I heard mention of a setback of 3 feet rather than the proposed 2 feet, so that's within your purview.
Just to argue with you, I'm indifferent on it. It's not a fence. A fence is obviously much more intrusive than a sign. You put it wherever you want, it meets your requirements. But
Can I just clarify? Well, one, I just want to say, good idea not putting the signage on the bank building. I like that idea very much. But just to clarify the location of the sign, we're talking about it being consistent with other signs, and there's one photo that we have that I just can't, it looks like the funeral home sign is closer to the sidewalk considerably than the credit union sign. So what distance what's consistent, or are we giving them a specific number?
Yeah, I think the discussion that we were having was to try to understand if there was consistency among what we were seeing as samples in terms of distance back from the sidewalk. I think the answer to that was no. I think Joe's proposal would be to set it 3 feet back from the sidewalk.
Okay.
And then I think some other members had other opinions on the subject.
That
I
looks like
just
it would be more
ask-
consistent with the funeral home, but closer than it would be for the credit union. Not that it necessarily matters,
Yeah.
but.
No, but I think to your point, at least to achieve some type of visual similarity within that block, maybe using the credit union sign as a point of reference instead of the funeral home, which is across the street, down a block, might be useful.
Could we just also clarify, because you had initially talked about the sign being in that location for a certain purpose because of the patio seating, could you discuss that again, just briefly?
Yeah, Matt Tomlinson again. The setbacks for the structures are significantly vary as well. The code really encourages pushing any new buildings right up to the street, which is not the case south of the building. So I'm not a sign guy, but just relative to the space in the front and the front yards varying significantly for what we're proposing versus those other structures, I think the sign has to relate to that from a location standpoint as well.
Can we put the landscape plan up? So we're kind of showing in this drawing here, the sign is located in the front yard, and it's just proud of that patio, so that there isn't the column in the corner of the patio directly in front of the sign.
Talking about with a sorry, could you point that out?
The sign's here in the front yard,
Starbucks?
yes,
Okay.
and there's a column for the patio space.
Okay, I thought we were talking about the sign for the bank, as far as, oh.
I mean, I see the reasoning behind where you have the sign right now. I was just saying, you know, I'm just, you know, trying to think this through. People are having, you know, different ideas about this, but to me, I can see why the sign was placed where it is. To me, that does not, I'm not concerned by it.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that a little bit as well. I'm not concerned with the placement of the sign, the location of the sign in relation to the sidewalk, because you've reduced the size of the sign a little bit. You've gone to the double post and panel, which I think is preferable to what you had shown us last time. So given kind of the slight scaling down of the sign from the previous version that you've had, I think it's more pedestrian oriented. So having it a little bit closer to the sidewalk, 2 feet versus 3, does not make a difference to me.
With the,
Jill, are you looking for HPC comments at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to discuss the Bonnie and Clyde sign. I really like it as a rectangle with the metal surround because it really does address the fenestration of the building. I think it works beautifully with that. I will suggest that it's actually too small and in scale to that building. And so I would, I like where it is. I like its design. I just think it's a little small, believe it or not. So it almost looks like an apology. And because the building that it's addressing is really proud and grand, and the fenestration openings are large. And when you compare that to this sign looks tiny. So that's, I think that, so I think from an architectural viewpoint, historic preservation viewpoint, it's the right approach. I just think it's a little small.
Sure. I can speak
Chuck,
to, oh, go ahead.
hold on. So Chuck, quantitatively, and subjecting you to criticism potentially from some of my fellow members here, what would you feel would be more appropriate?
Well, it's not our job to design, but I would suggest that it probably could be another 25% bigger. So, yeah.
I can give you at least.
And that may force you to come back to us. I hate to say that,
Yeah.
but you know, I just sorry, Joe.
So,
to Chuck's point, you need to be concerned about readability of that sign. So a little bit larger might help. And
Sure.
the Bonnie and the Clyde kind of all go together. So I would, if you increase the size of the sign, maybe you can work on the spacing of the lettering so that it's readable from the street or from a drive-by.
Am I allowed to respond?
if you, I would just like to say something quickly. Although you are not required to redesign, you can put parameters on that. So you could say, for instance, that the sign shall be no larger than whatever. That is an option. And then the applicant would have to design within those parameters. So you could put a condition if you chose to do that.
Thank you. So my response to this is when we first started the project in collaboration with our Hanlon team, there was a fair amount of feedback about the street massing from the Main Street side and really trying to get the top elevation here to blend with the Starbucks. And so our approach was to go totally different. They're two very different properties. And in looking in that elevation, our intent was to keep the massing at the same height and scale as the brick piers and adjacent patio, which falls into place from there with the text. Our client's less concerned about legibility. It's more of an aesthetic look that they're concerned about as their brand. Folks are going to know where Bonnie and Clyde are. It's really just to define the space and have a little bit of a wayfinding that we think is classy. So, yeah, there was a lot of intent more from the massing feedback from the Planning Commission originally, and that's where we started and how we landed there.
If I can add something to it, I actually think that the building itself is pretty much your sign, right? And I do like that the actual signage is understated. I feel like it goes with the Bonnie and Clyde theme, and this is a pedestrian-oriented signage. It's not meant for people who are driving by. I feel like this is more for the pedestrian, which is what we I think are going for as a village, and yeah, I don't know, I think it's appropriate. I feel like the building itself is the restaurant's signage. And the fact that it doesn't have a sign on the building is actually great. I feel like that is, it speaks to itself, and the understated signage just works with the whole Bonnie and Clyde theme in my view. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Any questions for the applicant? Okay. If anyone wishes to speak in support of the application? Anyone wish to speak in opposition to the application? Would the applicant like to provide any additional feedback or information? Do any of the board members have any additional questions or comments? Would you like to continue to discuss it as two boards?
Sure.
Okay.
I think there was two things we talked about, right? One was potentially moving it a foot back, as Joe's comment, and then Chuck's comment about making it potentially 20, or allowing them to have it be 25% bigger. I'm indifferent on Joe's comment. If people on the board feel strongly one way or another, I think it's fine. Just doing quick math, it's 22 inches by 52, 25% is roughly 28 by 66. If we want to allow it with a condition that it's about to be that big, within a range, I'd be fine with that. But I think to me, those are the only two things that are open. Unless I missed something during the questioning, people seem to be generally in favor of the style, the character, the lighting. It's really just those two issues.
Mm. And keep in mind, I guess, that the other thing is that none of your votes have to be unanimous.
We're on a pretty good streak, Joe. We don't want to ruin it.
I understand that, but and that's why I think the discussion is important. And if you decide to go that particular direction, or if you decide that you don't, that's okay too.
I like the idea of leaving it in Bonnie and Clyde's discretion, creating a ceiling for how big that sign could be, but letting them make a choice that's consistent with their aesthetic and what they're hoping for, so that they can kind of retain that vision for their property. I think if we're going to do anything with sizing of that, that's the approach I would want to see done. And I'll just note that I was strongly disliked the former version of the monument sign at the Starbucks, and I think this is a nice improvement. So thank you for the time and effort that was put on it.
Jill, the other, I can't see it from all the way down here. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to step on the toes of the design team. My only comment was not about legibility from the street, about the size of the Bonnie and Clyde sign. It had everything to do with comparing it to that beautiful building. And I agree with the comment that it should remain within the scale of the pedestrian scale. And so, yeah, if it moved from 22 high to 28 high, that would help with that scale. But again, I feel that I'm fine with giving them a range. If it stays where it is, that's fine. I've said my piece, and there you go.
Joe, recently we've been putting the condition on some of these sign approvals that it's for that business. Specifically, I'm referencing for what we recently approved, the Can Factory signage. And I think there's some interest in continuing with that condition, but I believe you worded it in a very professional way. If you could help me with that.
I'm going to ask you to help me out a little bit with what you're speaking to. So are you suggesting that the condition put on for signage for a specific business.
It was tied to the business where, the signage was for that establishment, and if that were to disappear, the signage was not necessarily like grandfathered into whatever would be there in the future.
So let me present to you a couple different ways to handle this. In terms of a certificate of appropriateness, if the signage changes, preservation commissions in many ways have the ability to regulate the message, right? Because there's a design element to it. When it comes to a planning board, part of the regulation of signage does not include regulation of the message.
Oh, I fully agree with that, and I think that's a constitutional right,
Correct.
but
Correct.
that's not what I'm stating.
Okay, and that's why I want you to walk very slowly with
Well,
me and explain to me what your expectation is for a condition.
We discussed this specifically for the can factory in regards to, we're not saying that whoever comes in there in the future, potentially, could just put a sign up of the same size and be fine, that they would have to come back before us specifically to address any issues we may have with color, logo, whatever. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to reserve that right for the planning board in the future. And I thought the way that we had worded that specifically for the can factory was something along the lines of, this approval is for this business. These words specifically. And there was a specific way that you had stated it that was poignant, and I am at a little bit of a loss for the exact.
Yeah,
So
and-
the unique situation I think that you're speaking to is the amendment to that initial approval for preservation. And so that was a unique design and didn't necessarily relate to the rest of the signage.
Wouldn't they, Joe, wouldn't somebody have to come back? If the Starbucks all of a sudden becomes a gym, doesn't the gym have to come back for new signage, right? They're gonna change, and wouldn't we have the right to say that sign was appropriate for one business but not for another?
So I think that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So signed site plan is required under certain instances, so new construction, if you're having more than 2 signs. Otherwise, if you're meeting the code,
Right.
you get to place that sign. So we're here today because we have a situation where we have what has been deemed as new construction. We have an addition going on to 58 South Main, and obviously the Starbucks building is a new building. So, that being said, you're approving signed site plan for signage. And so if somebody came in, there's a signed site plan approval that you're essentially creating the box that signage could go into. You're establishing those parameters.
Right, does that also extend to location on the site? Because if we,
Yes.
okay, good, because that would be my concern, would be somebody, a new business coming in the future, getting rid of the Bonnie and Clyde sign, building to the same dimensions, but then locating the sign elsewhere on the site.
It serves as a contract, so what you're
Okay.
looking at, and so that goes for anything before any of the boards, it serves as a contract. So what you're looking at, you're approving that. If at any time period, any of the businesses decide that they want to change signage, and it doesn't fit into that contract, they get to come back.
As long as that extends like hard and fast to not only the dimensions of the sign, but also the location on the site, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
As long as there's something in place to require, a future applicant to have to come back to us, in that case, then I'm fine with that.
Can I just ask a few clarifying questions?
Sure.
There's not a situation in which a future tenant of the bank building could try to affix anything to that building in terms of signage without being at least in front of historic preservation?
Correct.
Okay. And then just remind me, because the lots are subdivided, does the historic designation continue to extend the lot with the Starbucks
It
even
does.
after subdivision?
Correct.
Okay,
So,
so
and-
changes to that lot would continue to be subject to historic preservation review in addition to planning board review?
Correct. So the situation is, and I'll describe this again for those that might be viewing this hearing and also for the benefit of the boards, that when the subdivision was done, if you can imagine, we've got a blue rectangle that's construction paper. And you cut that rectangle, you still have blue construction paper. So the landmark designation remains on both of those parcels regardless of the subdivision. And as such, any changes to the exterior require a certificate of appropriateness. And additionally, additional review by the planning board. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I
Nope.
just want to make sure I understand.
Yep.
I apologize if I'm slow. So if we approved the Cubroom sign, in its or the Bonnie and Clyde sign in its current location, what we'd be saying to any future tenant is you can put a sign in that location,
Yes.
facing that direction?
Yep. With
To
a
those
permit.
dimensions?
With a permit, yep.
Okay. You can't turn the direction of the sign?
No.
Okay.
So the easiest way, let's suppose that Bonnie and Clyde turns to some other business. The quickest and easiest way to get signage on that property is to comply with the approval.
Can they modify colors?
I would say no, because again, the certificate of appropriateness is related to that design of the words, and they're regulating the color. So all of those things go into the C of A.
Okay, because I thought that was part of the concept behind why we had the issue with the I'm trying.
It's also part of your site plan review as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I'm trying to get on the same page
Mhm.
with you. You're better than me.
Well, that's false. I disagree with that comment. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we're gonna have the planning board, forgive me, we had a lot of conversation. I did call for those in support and those in opposition, correct? All right, we'll do that one more time. Anybody in support of the application? Anyone in opposition of the application? Okay, so let's do planning board first. Any conditions?
Are we wanting to do the condition that they could increase the size of the signage at Bonnie and Clyde's?
Yeah, I think we can add up to 28 inches tall and 66 inches wide. It was roughly 25%, which I think was a good suggestion. So it can remain the same and get a little bigger.
Joe, do you have a hill you want to die on about the distance to the sidewalk?
I will say that the applicant graciously agreed to just do it, so, there was that, okay? There was no objection from the applicant.
It still has to be a condition.
So, no, I understand that. I'm just saying, the applicant's really eager to do that, so.
We can vote on Joe's condition. It could be we could have a 4-1 vote if you'd like.
Can we just vote on Joe?
So Joe, when they add conditions to their approval, if we disagree with those conditions, what happens next?
So let's have the group discussion again.
See, look what you did, Joe.
So let's have the group discussion, Doris. That's a very important point, and I was getting a little bit antsy. Is it the desire of both planning board and PC to add a condition to the approval or the motion? So we've got two things going on. We have a potential condition that the signage for lot 1 shall be a maximum of 28 inches by 68 inches. And that the sign on Lot 2 shall be set back from the street 3 feet.
I understood the applicant's explanation as to why it is where it is, and I don't think that it should be set back because that brick pillar will interfere in its visibility and just not look appropriate. And it won't look like it belongs where it is. It'll look like a mistake.
Any
I
other
agree.
comments? Okay.
Yeah,
I agree.
to the extent this is helpful, I think particularly as the monument sign has changed to be a more restrained sign, if it is in conflict with that brick pillar, it's going to be problematic.
I have to agree with that as well. I think its current location is the appropriate location.
Okay. So I think I'm hearing that there is not a desire to locate the sign 3 feet from the property line. Okay. On the other condition that was discussed is that the signage for Lot 1 shall be a maximum of 28 inches by 66 inches. How do the members feel about that?
That's okay with me.
I think that's, it's just an option, it's an observation. Again, when you look at the facade of the building, it really does work better. So, but I like to keep it as an option. So.
I would leave it up to the designer's discretion. So if this is the maximum, that's fine. If they want to leave it the way it is, I think that's okay as well.
Okay, so keep in mind that if the condition on the approval states that the Lot 1 shall have a maximum of 28 inches by 66 inches, that means that should another business go in there, they could have a sign of 28 inches by 66 inches.
Can I apologize, I just want to ask a hypothetical question because it will help me to understand. We're approving only the black and white signage.
Correct.
So like if a Dave & Buster's moved in there,
They
could have a sign of that size, but they could not have a colored sign.
It would be a situation where they would have to go back for the C of A for certain, because that message would be changing and the Preservation Commission has purview over that. Okay,
One quick question, sorry.
Sure.
Does that meet code? The square footage for the maximum?
so, and as I noted earlier, there is a provision within the code that when it is before you, the planning board, that you're able to waive code when you deem that it's appropriate. So the ground area for signage is 23 square feet, the maximum area, with a maximum height of 5 feet. And so we have a situation where Lot 1 has proposed 3.25 square feet per side and 3 feet 6 inches, including the base. So based on that, I would say that they would still be in compliance with what's permitted.
Thanks.
All right, so we'll start with planning board. So I'm going to read the request, which will act as the resolution, and if I could get a first and a second on that, and also I will read the condition that I've heard the members discuss. So the request is to review and approve signage for uses located on Lot 1 and Lot 2, on condition that the signage for Lot 1 shall be a maximum of 28 inches by 66 inches.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous after all.
Okay, so Historic Preservation Commission is up next. What we're going to go through is the standards. So the first one is the general design, character, and appropriateness to the property of the proposed alteration or new construction. And this is all related to the signage.
I just wanted to just say that the revised Starbucks sign is a huge improvement and very appropriate for the village.
And the Bonnie and Clyde sign is appropriate to the architectural character of the Fairport National Bank building.
Can you speak a little to the discussion of the condition to allow for a maximum and how that would remain appropriate?
I thought we'd cover that under the scale number 2.
That works for me.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on to number 2. The scale of the proposed alteration or new construction in relation to the property itself, surrounding properties in the neighborhood.
Did you want to take this, Chuck?
I'll stay with the Fairport National Bank. Someone else can handle the Starbucks sign, all right? So the scale of the proposed signage for the Bonnie and Clyde restaurant is appropriate in scale. Both boards offered a slight increase in scale if the designers choose to use that in order to allow the sign to be a little bit more in scale with the building, but overall its location and scale is very, very nice. Also, it was mentioned that it is an appropriate scale to the pedestrians, which it will be surrounded by a pedestrian walkway and terrace, so it's beautifully scaled for the pedestrians as well.
And then the scale and design of the proposed Starbucks sign, I think, fits very nicely into the signs on adjacent properties and properties located near the proposed Starbucks. And then the location of the sign, I think, also makes a lot of sense, given the new construction that's happening in terms of that pillar location on the patio.
Okay, this is standard 3, texture and materials in the relation to similar features of other properties in the neighborhood.
The Starbucks sign is appropriate to the character of the residential buildings that are around it, like the Fairport Savings Bank, or the Fairport Federal Credit Union is a former residence, and so the sign that's proposed for Starbucks is compatible with that neighboring building, which is a historic structure. And then the sign for the Bonnie and Clyde restaurant, its texture and materials complement the fenestration of the former Fairport National Bank.
Okay, number 4, visual compatibility with surrounding properties, including proportion of the property's front facade, proportion and arrangement of windows and other openings within the facade, roof shape, and the rhythm of spacing of properties on streets, including setback.
I think we addressed this a little already. I think the Starbucks, its location on the property and compatibility with surrounding properties, they've done a lot of work in looking at the other signs in the area. The location, I think, is appropriate and compatible with the area and with the patio for the Starbucks. I would also say for the bank, the Bonnie and Clyde sign as well. I think it's compatible with the facade use of some of the materials, and with the designer being able to, change the proportion if they so choose. That allows for a little bit of flexibility. But I think that the designs as is are compatible with surrounding properties and in proportion.
Five, the importance of historic architectural or other features to the significance of the property. So of course, we have new signage here. Do you feel that the proposed signage specifically for the existing building is appropriate to the character? And preserves the importance of the historic architectural other features of the property?
I think this would be a good point to mention that for the bank, the fact that the sign is a ground-mounted sign and not mounted on the historic building itself is a win. So for that number 5, that's a positive feature for the historic nature of that building. I don't know how to answer the Starbucks sign, so I'll let someone else work on that one.
Well, I think one thing, maybe it's a negative, but it does not, I don't believe that they detract from the historic or architectural features. They blend in with that and don't stand out. I don't know how else to say that. I think that.
Would you say that the
they don't
proposed?
create
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
No, go ahead. Jen.
Would you say that the proposed signage does not detract from the neighboring properties?
Yes, that as well.
Any other additional information you'd like to provide to those standards? Okay, I'm going to read the resolution and the condition, and then I'm seeking a first and a second. So the request is to review and approve signage for uses located on Lot 1 and Lot 2. And on condition that the signage for Lot 1 shall be a maximum of 28 inches by 66 inches.
I'll make that motion.
Opposition? Motion passes.
Okay, and with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, the joint meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Board.
So moved.